The command center of the Indomitable was quiet. It was the heavy quiet of people holding their breath. Blue and green lights from control panels lit the faces of the crew. In the middle of the room stood Commander Gene. He looked at the large main screen. It showed a map of the solar system. Many red dots, representing the enemy Cthar fleet, were gathered near Mars. They were getting closer to Earth with every hour. For 5 long years, this war had raged. Humanity had fought, but it had been a slow, painful retreat. They had lost colonies on distant worlds. They had lost ships and good people, all to buy time. Now, Gene thought time was the one thing they had run out of. There was no more room to retreat. The next battle would be for Earth itself. A soft beep sounded. The main screen changed. The star map was replaced by the face of President Sue. She was in her office on Earth. Her face was serious. She looked very tired, but her voice was clear and strong. "Open a channel to the Cthar command ship," she said. "Channel open, Madam President." A communications officer on Jin's ship replied. Sue took a deep breath. She looked directly into the camera. "This is President Sue of the Unified Earth Government, speaking to the Cthar High Command. Your invasion of our space has brought nothing but death and suffering. You have pushed us to the very edge of our home. We are a people who desire peace. We have shown great restraint, but this is your final chance. Cease your attacks immediately. Withdraw all your forces from the Sol system. If you do not, if you force our hand, you will leave us with no choice. The consequences will be severe. They will be absolute. This is Earth's last warning. Stop attacking, or witness our true fury." The message ended. The silence in the command center felt even heavier. Everyone waited. They waited for a response from the alien invaders. Gene looked at the tactical screen. The Cthar fleet continued its approach. They did not slow down. They did not change course. Then the main screen flickered. A new face appeared. It was Commander Tavik of the Cthar Armada. His skin had a gray, scale-like texture. His eyes were black and cold. He showed his sharp teeth in what was not a smile. "President of Earth." Tavik's voice was a harsh scrape, translated by the computers. "We have received your warning." He let the word hang in the air, making it sound silly. "You speak of consequences. You speak of fury. These are the noises a small animal makes before it is crushed. Your world is rich with resources. Your people are weak. You have fought bravely for creatures of your level. But your fate was decided the day we found you. Your consequences are meaningless. Your planet will be scoured clean. Your species will be a memory." The screen went dark. The Cthar had rejected the offer. No, Gene thought it was worse than rejection. They had mocked it. They had looked at humanity's final plea for peace and laughed. President Sue's face reappeared on the screen. There was no surprise in her eyes, only a deep, weary sadness, and beneath it, a core of steel. She gave a single, slow nod to Gene. Gene turned from the screen to face his crew. Every person on the bridge was looking at him. He saw fear in their eyes, but he also saw determination. They had all lost friends in this war. They had all seen the destruction. The time for pleading was over. His voice was low and steady, carrying across the quiet room. "They have made their choice. Signal all commands. Execute Protocol Ares." A wave of action swept through the bridge. The quiet was broken by the sound of urgent voices and tapping on controls. "Signal sent to all EDF sectors," the communications officer said. "Confirming Protocol Ares initiation," another officer added. Gene walked over to his chair and sat down. He strapped himself in. The gentle hum of the Indomitable's engines began to change. It grew deeper, louder. The ship was waking up from a long sleep. Down on Earth, in a secret bunker deep beneath a mountain, a team of scientists watched their own screens. Their leader was a woman named Mira. She had dedicated her life to this moment. Protocol Ares was not a single weapon. It was a plan of ultimate deception. For decades, humanity had known they were not alone in the universe. They had also decided that the galaxy was a dangerous place. To appear strong was to invite challenge. To appear weak was to invite conquest. So, they had chosen a third path, deception. They had presented a unified face to the stars, but a technologically limited one. The ships they sent to meet other species were good, but not their best. The weapons they showed were powerful, but not their most powerful. They created a vast network of energy fields and sensor projectors, a veil that made their true capabilities seem like ghosts and rumors. The war itself, as terrible as it was, had been part of the plan. They had fought hard enough to be credible, but they had always pulled back. They had let the Cthar think they were winning, let them grow overconfident, let them push humanity all the way back to its home system. All to make this one moment possible. Mira watched a counter on her screen tick down to 0. The Cthar fleet is fully committed. They are in the kill zone, one of her assistants said. Mira did not hesitate. This was what they had worked for, what so many had died for. Initiate the veil drop, she said, her voice calm. On my mark. She took one last look at the data. Everything was ready. 3, 2, 1. Drop. Across the entire solar system, it happened. The complex web of energy that had hidden humanity's true strength simply vanished. It was like a giant curtain being pulled back. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Gene felt the change. The ship shuddered as systems he had never truly seen in action came online. New power readings flashed across his console. The energy levels were 10 times what they were moments before. The gentle hum was now a powerful, deep-throated roar on his tactical screen. The entire EDF fleet was changing. Their icons on the screen glowed brighter. Their engine signatures flared with unbelievable power. Ships that had seemed slow and bulky now moved with a grace and speed that should have been impossible. The Cthar fleet, which had been advancing in a confident formation, suddenly hesitated. Their perfect lines wavered. Gene allowed himself a small, hard smile. It was not a happy expression. It was the look of a man who had just unleashed a terrible necessity. All stations report status, he said. Primary weapon systems online. Shields at maximum. Engines at 120%. The Valiant and the Dauntless report the same. The entire fleet is reading green across the board. Gene looked at the main screen at the image of the Cthar Armada. Just minutes ago, they had looked like an unstoppable wave of destruction. Now they looked like targets. All right, Gene said, his voice calm and clear. Let's show them what consequences look like. All batteries, free fire. Target their lead ships. The first shots from the Indomitable were not the familiar orange pulses of laser fire they had used for years. They were brilliant lances of pure white energy that crossed the distance to the enemy in the blink of an eye. The Cthar shields, which had easily absorbed human weapons fire before, flared brightly and then shattered like glass. The alien ships beneath them vanished in silent explosions. The war was not over, but the fight had just truly begun. And for the first time, the Cthar were on the wrong side of the battlefield. The view from the research station was breathtaking. Jupiter filled the massive observation window, a giant swirling sphere of orange, white, and red. The great red spot stared out like a silent, ancient eye. But Dr. Mira was not looking at the gas giant. Her eyes were fixed on the bank of screens in front of her. Data streams flowed like digital rivers, showing power levels, sensor readings, and fleet movements from across the solar system. Her hands moved quickly over the console, her touch calm and sure. Around her, the other scientists in the control room worked with a quiet intensity. This was the moment they had trained for their entire lives. This was the reason for the station's existence, hidden in the high radiation of Jupiter's orbit, a place the Cthar had never bothered to look at. A young technician, his voice tight with stress, spoke without looking up. The Cthar fleet is passing the orbital path of Mars. They are accelerating. Estimated time to Earth's defensive perimeter is 6 hours. Mira nodded slowly. Thank you, June. Continue monitoring. She turned to another screen. It showed a live feed from the bridge of the Indomitable. She saw Commander Jin's face, hard and focused. She heard President Seuss' final, desperate warning to the aliens. And then she heard the Cthar commander's scornful reply. The sound of his laughter, a dry, rattling sound, echoed in the quiet control room that a few people flinched. Mira did not. She felt a cold anger settle in her stomach. This was why they had done it. This arrogance. This belief that humanity was just an animal to be swept aside. The order from Jean came through clearly. Execute Protocol Ares. Mira took a deep breath. This was it. No more hiding. She pressed a sequence of keys. A small, clear cover lifted on the console, revealing a single, red button. It was not strictly necessary, but the engineers had insisted. Some actions, they said, needed a physical step. A point of no return. Initiate the veil drop, Mira said, her voice echoing in the room. On my mark. Her mind flashed back, not for the first time, to the beginning. The day the first alien signal had been detected. It was not a friendly greeting. It was a Cthar scout ship, and it had immediately opened fire on a human science vessel. The ship, the Curiosity, was destroyed with all hands. That was the first death in a war that had not yet been declared. Humanity's leaders and brightest minds had gathered. They knew they were outmatched in a straight fight. The Cthar Empire was vast, their technology fearsome. A direct war would lead to the extinction of the human race. So, they had conceived the greatest deception in history. They called it the masquerade. They would pretend to be weaker than they were. They would build their true fleet in secret, hidden in asteroid belts, on the dark sides of moons, and in orbit around gas giants like Jupiter. They would fight a war, but it would be a controlled retreat. They would lose battles on purpose. They would let worlds be taken. It was a horrible, painful strategy. Every loss was a real loss. Every life lost was a real person. But it was the only way to make the enemy believe they had already won. Mira had been a young physicist then. She had helped design the Veil, a network of powerful energy projectors and sensor jammers. These devices made human technology look less advanced than it really was. When an EDF ship fought, its engines were secretly limited, its shields artificially weakened. The Veil made their best weapons look like their only weapons. For years, they had lived this lie. They had built amazing things in secret, faster-than-light drives, powerful gravity weapons, ships that could turn in an instant, and then they had hidden them. They had watched good soldiers die in inferior ships, all to sell the story. The guilt of it was a heavy weight on everyone involved. 3. Mira counted down, her voice pulling her back to the present. She thought of her brother. He had been a pilot on the EDF frigate Guardian. 2 years ago, the Guardian was destroyed in the Battle of the Belt. The official report said its shields failed under a concentrated Cthar attack. The truth was, the Guardian's shields had been artificially reduced by the Veil to make the defeat look believable. Her brother died for the plan. He died to make the Cthar confident. 2. The Cthar had pushed them all the way back to Earth. They were now in the kill zone, the area of space where the hidden human fleet could surround them and where the full power of their weapons could be unleashed without risking other human colonies. The enemy was exactly where they wanted them. Overconfident, arrogant, believing the fight was already over. 1. Myra's finger pressed the red button. It made a soft, satisfying click. Drop, she said. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the data on the screens went wild. All across the solar system, the energy projectors of the Veil shut down. The false sensor images of a weak human fleet vanished, replaced by the true, terrifying picture. On her main screen, she saw the change. The icons representing the EDF ships, which had been a dim yellow, suddenly flared into a brilliant, fiery red. Their power signatures exploded off the charts. New ships that had been hidden by the Veil, now appeared on the sensors. They poured out from behind moons and from within asteroid fields. They were sleek and deadly, their designs unlike anything the Cthar had ever seen. Veil drop confirmed, June said, his voice filled with awe. The Indomitable's power output has increased by 900%. The entire fleet is reporting similar readings. The hidden reserves are now active and engaging the enemy. Mira watched as the first true shots were fired. Lances of pure white energy, not the weak orange pulses the Cthar were used to, sliced through the darkness of space. They punched through Cthar shields as if they were not even there. Alien ships that had seemed invincible moments before were now turning into fireballs and clouds of debris. She felt no joy, only a grim satisfaction. The long, painful game was over. The deception had worked. The Cthar had been tricked into attacking a planet they thought was weak, only to find a hornet's nest of unimaginable power. A new communication came in. It was from Commander Jean on the Indomitable. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with a cold fire. "The mask is off, Dr. Kim," he said. "The performance is over. It's time for the main event." Mira nodded. "The stage is yours, Commander. All systems are green. Give them the consequences they were promised." She leaned back in her chair, watching the screens. The hidden strength of humanity was now unleashed. The Cthar had wanted a war of annihilation. They were about to get one. But they were not going to be the annihilators. They were going to be on the receiving end. After years of hiding and losing, it was finally, truly humanity's turn to fight back. The battle had become a chase. The organized Cthar armada was now a scattered collection of fleeing ships. They tried to regroup to form a new defensive line, but the human fleet did not let them. The new human ships were too fast. They moved around the slower Cthar vessels, cutting off their escape routes. The space between Mars and the asteroid belt was lit up with silent explosions, each one the death of an alien warship. Inside his fighter, callsign Ghost, pilot Juan felt a strange calm. His hands moved smoothly over the controls. His ship, the Revenant, responded to his thoughts almost before he made them. This was the machine he had trained in for years in secret simulators. This was its true purpose. His display showed the chaos of the battle. But to Juan, it was not chaos. It was a pattern. He saw paths through the enemy fire. He saw weak points in the enemy formations. His job was to be a surgical knife, cutting the enemy apart piece by piece. A group of 3 Cthar corvettes were trying to hide behind a large, broken piece of an asteroid. They were firing their plasma cannons in a steady rhythm, trying to cover each other. "Ghost, this is command. You see that pocket of resistance near asteroid Gamma 7? "I see them," Juan said, his voice quiet. "Clear them out. They're causing problems for our larger ships moving in." "On it." Juan pushed the control stick forward. The Revenant's engine surged, and he shot toward the asteroid field. The feeling of acceleration was immense, but the gravity field inside his cockpit kept him perfectly comfortable. He weaved through the floating rocks, his ship moving like a fish through water. Alarms blared in the Cthar corvettes as he got closer. They tried to turn their guns toward him, but he was too fast. He flew straight at the lead ship. At the last second, he pulled up, flying directly over its hull. As he passed, he released a small, smart bomb. It attached itself to the corvette's engine with a magnetic clamp. He didn't wait to see the explosion. He was already banking hard, moving toward the second corvette. This one tried to run. It was useless. Juan fired his railguns. The high-speed metal slugs ripped through the corvette's thin rear armor. It sparked and then went dark, drifting powerless. The third corvette panicked. It fired all its weapons at once, creating a cloud of green plasma in front of it. Juan simply flew around the cloud. He came up from below the ship and fired a single, precise shot into its bridge. The ship stopped firing immediately. The first corvette finally exploded as the bomb he had planted went off, tearing it in half. The whole engagement had taken less than 30 seconds. "Targets neutralized," Juan reported calmly. "Moving to next objective." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Jean watched the progress. Juan's callsign, Ghost, kept appearing on the tactical screen, moving from one hot spot to another, solving problems. He was one of their best, a product of the secret training programs. It was good to see the training pay off. But the battle was not won yet. The Cthar were beaten, but they were not destroyed. Commander Tavik still had his flagship, the World Breaker, and a core group of his largest battleships. They were falling back toward the asteroid belt, using the large rocks for cover. "They're trying to lure us into close quarters," Jin's tactical officer said. "The belt will limit our mobility and their own. It's a desperate move." Jean nodded. "They know they can't win in open space. They want to make the fight messy. They hope we'll make a mistake in there. He thought for a moment. Order the Valiant and Dauntless to flank them from the sides. We will push them from the front. And send in the Revenant squadrons. They are built for this. Juan received the new orders. His squadron, a group of 10 Revenant fighters, was to enter the asteroid belt and harass the enemy battleships. Their goal was to break their formation from the inside, to make them panic. Flying into the asteroid belt was like flying into a storm of rock. Pieces of stone and metal, some as small as a person, some as large as a city, tumbled and spun in every direction. Sensors were less reliable here. It was a place where a pilot's skill mattered more than his ship's power. Juan led his squadron in. They moved in a loose formation, giving each other room to maneuver. The Cthar battleships were ahead, their massive gray shapes moving slowly between the giant asteroids. They were firing constantly, their plasma cannons lighting up the dark rocks with green light. "All right, team," Juan said over the squadron channel. "Remember your training. Stay mobile. Their big guns can't track us in here. Target their weapon systems and their sensor arrays. Make them blind." The Revenants spread out, diving into the chaotic field. Juan focused on the lead battleship. He flew close to a large asteroid, using it to hide his approach. He popped out on the other side, right next to the battleship's hull. It was so big it felt like a city wall next to him. He flew along the hull, so close he could see the details of the metal plates. He saw a plasma cannon turret swiveling, trying to find a target. He fired a short burst from his railguns. The turret exploded in a shower of sparks and was silent. Alarms would be blaring inside the battleship. They would know a small fighter was attached to them like a mosquito, but they would not be able to hit him. Their large weapons were designed for other big ships, not for something as small and fast as the Revenant. Juan continued his run, taking out 2 more turrets and a communication array. He could see other Revenants from his squadron doing the same to the other battleships. They were like a swarm of bees, stinging a giant to death. One of the Cthar captains panicked. His ship, trying to shake off a Revenant, fired its main engines to make a sudden turn. It was a fatal mistake in the crowded asteroid belt. The massive ship could not turn fast enough. It slammed sideways into a giant, spinning asteroid. The impact was silent from the outside, but the effect was catastrophic. The battleship's hull cracked open. Air, fire, and bodies spilled out into the vacuum. The ship broke into 2 pieces, its internal explosions tearing it apart. The destruction of one of their largest ships broke the spirit of the remaining Cthar. Their formation completely fell apart. Some tried to run deeper into the belt. Others turned to fight blindly, firing at shadows and hitting only asteroids. Juan pulled his ship away, climbing up and out of the tumbling rocks. He looked back at the scene. It was a graveyard. The mighty Cthar fleet, which had terrorized humanity for years, was being dismantled piece by piece in the darkness. He felt no joy, only a tired satisfaction. The job was done. The enemy was broken. Now it was just a matter of cleaning up. Commander Tavik stood on the command deck of his ship, the World Breaker. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The human leader's final threat had been pathetic. It was the squeal of a creature about to be crushed. His fleet was vast, a dark cloud of sharp metal and powerful weapons. They moved toward Earth, the blue-green prize he had been promised. His crews were relaxed. They saw this as the final, easy step of a long campaign. The first change was small. A junior officer at a sensor station made a confused sound. "Commander," the officer said, "I am reading power fluctuations from the human fleet. Significant ones." Tavik did not even turn. "They are desperate. They are overloading their weak systems for one last stand. It is a suicide tactic. Ignore it." But the fluctuations did not stop. They grew. The numbers on the sensor screens began to climb at an impossible rate. The soft yellow energy signatures of the human ships began to brighten, turning orange, then a fierce, blazing red. "Commander!" The sensor officer's voice was sharp with new alarm. "The human flagship, the Indomitable, its power signature has increased by a factor of 10. No, 15. This is not possible with their technology." Tavik finally turned, his scaly brow furrowed. "Show me." The main viewer switched to a visual of the human fleet. A moment ago, the EDF ships had been sitting ducks, slow and bulky. Now they were moving. It was not a slow, clumsy movement. It was a blur. They shifted positions with a speed that made Tavik's eyes hurt. Their hulls, once a dull gray, now shimmered with a visible energy field, a soft blue light that clung to them like a second skin. Then his tactical officer spoke, his voice trembling. "New contacts. Multiple new contacts. They are coming from everywhere." All across the edges of his sensor screen, new icons flashed into existence. Dozens of them, then hundreds. They emerged from behind the moon. They rose up from the asteroid belt. They came from the direction of Jupiter. These were not the blocky, utilitarian human ships he had fought for years. These were different. They were sleek and predatory, shaped like arrows or daggers. Their designs were clean and fast. They moved in perfect, silent formation, their engines leaving faint blue trails in the darkness. The human fleet had not just gotten a power boost. It had tripled in size with ships he never knew existed. A cold knot tightened in Tavik's stomach. This was not a suicide charge. This was an ambush. A trap laid on a solar system-wide scale. On the bridge of the Indomitable, the mood was entirely different. The heavy quiet was gone, replaced by a calm, professional energy. Crew members spoke to each other in clear, confident voices. The ship itself felt different to Gene. It was no longer a tired beast being whipped forward. It was a powerful predator finally unleashed. He could feel the thrum of the real engines through his chair. He could see the true capability of his weapon systems on the displays. "All ships report ready, Commander," his tactical officer said. "The fleet is in position. The enemy vanguard is in the optimal engagement zone." Gene looked at the main screen. He saw the Kthar fleet, which just minutes ago had been a terrifying wave of red. Now it looked like a group of lost, confused animals. Their formations were breaking as captains panicked, trying to understand what was happening. "Open a fleet-wide channel," Gene said. The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, sir." Gene spoke, his voice calm and steady, carrying to every human ship. "This is Commander Gene. For 5 years we have fought with one hand behind our back. We have retreated. We have lost friends and worlds. All for this moment. The mask is off. The time for hiding is over." They were told to stop or witness our true fury. They did not stop. So let's show them. "All units, engage the enemy. Fight with the strength our people have saved for so long. For Earth." He closed the channel and turned to his crew. "All batteries, free fire. Target their lead destroyers first." The Indomitable's main weapons, massive railguns that had been secretly upgraded, fired. There was no bright laser light. Instead, there was a deep, thunderous sound as magnetic coils launched solid metal projectiles at a fraction of the speed of light. The projectiles were invisible to the eye, but their effect was not on Tavik's screen. 2 of his largest destroyers simply exploded. One moment they were there, the core of his attack force. The next, they were expanding clouds of gas and molten metal. Their shields had not even flared. They had been punched through as if they were made of paper. "Return fire," Tavik screamed, his voice losing its calm for the first time. "All ships, target the human flagship. Destroy it." A storm of green plasma fire erupted from the Kthar fleet. It streaked toward the Indomitable. Gene watched the incoming fire on his screen. It was a massive volley, enough to destroy a dozen of their old-style ships. "Brace for impact," he said, his voice still calm. The plasma bolts slammed into the Indomitable's shields. The view screen lit up with bright green light. The ship shuddered, but it was a gentle vibration, like a large vehicle driving over a small bump. The shield indicator on Jin's console dipped by a tiny, almost insignificant percentage. "Shields holding at 97%, the tactical officer reported. "Minimal dispersion. No hull damage." On the world breaker, Tavik stared in disbelief. A direct hit from that much firepower should have vaporized the human ship. It should not even have shaken them. The humans had not just been hiding ships. They had been hiding their true defensive technology. Their shields were orders of magnitude stronger than anything his scientists had predicted. The battle was no longer a battle. It was a dismantling. The human ships moved too fast to hit reliably. Their shields were too strong to break easily, and their weapons cut through Cthar armor as if it were water. Gene watched the tactical display. His new, hidden ships, the Revenant-class fighters, were slicing through the enemy formations. They moved in ways that defied physics, making sharp, instant turns that no living pilot should be able to survive. He saw one pilot, callsign Ghost, who was especially skilled, taking out 3 enemy corvettes in as many seconds. Focus fire on their command and control ships, Gene ordered. Break their coordination. They rely on it. The human fleet obeyed instantly. Waves of white energy and invisible railgun shots converged on the larger Cthar vessels. Communications ships were silenced. Carrier ships were split in two. The organized Cthar armada began to fracture into scattered, isolated groups, each one being systematically hunted down by the faster, stronger human forces. Tavik watched his screen in horror. The red icons of his fleet were blinking out, one after another. The confident swarm was being erased from the map. He had come to this system expecting a victory parade. Instead, he had walked his entire fleet into a slaughterhouse. The humans had not been pleading from a position of weakness. Their warning had been a genuine, final offer of mercy, and he had laughed at it. The cold knot in his stomach turned to ice. He had made a terrible, terrible mistake. The command deck of the World Breaker was a scene of panic. The calm, arrogant confidence of the Cthar was gone. It had been replaced by the frantic shouts of officers and the constant, blaring sound of damage alarms. Warning lights painted the dark room in flashing red. The smell of smoke and burned circuits filled the air. Commander Tavik stood in the middle of the chaos, but he felt completely still inside. He was frozen. He watched his main tactical screen, and with every passing second, another red icon representing one of his ships winked out of existence. The human fleet was a storm of blue light, surrounding them, cutting them down. They were efficient. They were merciless. This was not a battle. It was an execution. The humans had not just been hiding their strength. They had been hiding a completely different level of technology. Their speed, their shields, their weapons. It was all far beyond anything the Cthar Empire possessed. The war for Earth had been a trick, a trap, and he, Commander Tavik, had led his entire armada right into it. A junior officer stumbled toward him, his uniform torn. "Commander, the Void Claw and the Star Razor are gone. The human fighters, they are everywhere. Our weapons cannot hit them." Tavik did not answer. His mind was racing, searching for a way out. There was no retreat. The human ships were faster. There was no surrender. He had mocked their offer of peace. He had promised to scour their world clean. His eyes fell on a different console. A console that was kept under a secure cover. It was the control for the planet Cracker. It was the most powerful weapon in his fleet, a massive energy cannon designed to break a world apart for mining. It was not meant for battle. It was slow to charge and left his ship vulnerable. But it was the only thing he had left. A cold, desperate rage filled him. If he was going to be destroyed, he would not go alone. He would take the human homeworld with him. He would make good on his threat. He would give them a scar they would never forget, even if he could not have the victory. "Silence!" Tavik roared, his voice cutting through the panic on the bridge. The crew stopped and looked at him. "We are not finished yet. They have shown us one trick. Now we will show them ours." He walked to the secure console and pressed his hand against it. A scanner read his palm. The cover slid back, revealing the controls for the planet Cracker. "Set a course for Earth," he commanded. "Full power to the forward thrusters. Ignore all other threats. Target the human planet." "Commander," his first officer said, his voice trembling, "the weapon takes 15 minutes to charge. The human fleet will destroy us before—" "Do it!" Tavik screamed, his composure completely shattered. Let them try to stop us. We will tear their blue world in half. Let them burn in the fire they have ignited. On the Indomitable, the mood was focused and determined. The battle was going perfectly. The Cthar fleet was in disarray. "Commander," the tactical officer said, his tone shifting, "the world breaker is moving. It's breaking away from the main engagement." Jean looked at the screen. The massive Cthar flagship was turning. It was ignoring the human ships firing on it, its shields glowing brightly as it absorbed the punishment. It was pointing itself on a direct course for Earth. "What is he doing?" Jean wondered aloud. "He can't hope to reach it." Then a new warning appeared on the screen. A massive energy buildup was detected from the world breaker. The computer identified the signature. "It's their planet cracker weapon," the sensor officer said, his voice tight. "He's charging it. He's gonna fire on Earth." Cold dread filled Jean. The planet cracker was not a standard military weapon. It was a tool of planetary destruction. A single blast would not just destroy cities. It would fracture the planet's crust, making the world uninhabitable. The Cthar were not trying to conquer Earth anymore. They were trying to murder it. "All ships, concentrate fire on the world breaker," Jean ordered, his voice urgent for the first time. "Take down its shields. Stop that weapon." The entire human fleet turned its attention to the single massive ship. A storm of white energy and railgun fire slammed into its shields. The shields held, but they began to flicker. The Cthar ship was taking immense damage, but it did not change course. It was a suicide run. On Earth, in the deep underground bunker, President Su watched the same data. The image of the world breaker with its weapon charging was on every screen. The room was silent. They had won the battle, but they were about to lose the war. They had shown their true strength, and the enemy's response was to try and kill them all. She saw the human fleet's attacks having little effect. The Cthar ship was too big, its shields too strong. It would be able to fire. She opened a secure channel to Jean. His face appeared on her screen. He looked grim. "Commander," she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were hard. "They have forced our hand. They have seen our strength. Now they will witness our fury. You are authorized to use the Gorgon Protocol." On the Indomitable, Jean felt a chill. The Gorgon Protocol. It was the final option. A weapon they had hoped never to use. It was not a weapon of destruction, but of unraveling. It manipulated the fabric of space itself. He turned to his communications officer. "Patch me through to Dr. Kim at the Jupiter Research Station." A moment later, Myra's face appeared on his screen. She looked pale but resolved. "Mira," Jean said, "the authorization is given. Use Gorgon. Target the planet cracker's energy beam." Mira nodded slowly. "Understood. Initiating Gorgon Protocol." On the research station, the atmosphere was tense. Mira entered a long series of codes. The Gorgon device was not on a ship. It was a series of satellites hidden deep in the asteroid belt. They were not weapons in the normal sense. They were reality-altering machines. "Satellites are active and aligned," one of her team reported. "Targeting the vector of the planet cracker's discharge," another said. Mira watched the countdown for the Cthar weapon. It was at 10% charge. "Fire the Gorgon Protocol," she said. There was no bright beam of light. No explosión. The Gorgon satellites activated. In the space between the world breaker and Earth, the void of space itself seemed to twist. It was like looking at a reflection in a funhouse mirror. The very spot where the planet cracker's beam would travel began to warp. On the world breaker, Tavik saw the energy gauge hit 100%. A triumphant, savage roar was forming in his throat. "Fire!" The planet cracker unleashed a massive beam of pure destructive energy. It was a river of orange and white fire, wide enough to vaporize a continent. It shot toward the beautiful blue planet. It never reached its target. The beam entered the warp zone of space. Instead of continuing in a straight line, the energy twisted in on itself. It was pulled into a single, infinitely dense point, a temporary artificial singularity. A tiny, man-made black hole. The entire terrifying beam of energy was sucked into this point and vanished. as if it had been poured down a drain. The singularity lasted for less than a second before it collapsed. But the effect of its collapse was devastating. The immense gravitational force it released was like a giant, invisible hand that swept through the Cthar fleet. It did not explode the ships, crushed them. The World Breaker and the battleships surrounding it were instantly compressed into tiny, dense spheres of metal. One moment they were mighty warships. The next, they were just perfectly round, silent balls of scrap, floating where an armada had been. The silence that fell over the battlefield was absolute. The remaining Cthar ships, the few that were left, simply stopped moving. They had just seen their flagship and their most powerful weapons erased from existence by a power they could not even understand. On the bridge of the Indomitable, no one cheered. They just stared at the main screen, at the empty space where the enemy had been. Jean took a slow, deep breath. The threat was over. The true fury had been witnessed, and it was more terrible than anyone could have imagined. The silence on the bridge of the Indomitable was heavy. It was not a peaceful silence. It was the quiet that comes after a great and terrible noise. On the main view screen, the last Cthar ships had stopped moving. Their weapons were dark. They floated in the blackness, powerless and afraid. The great battle was over. Jean sat in his command chair. He felt very tired. He had won. Humanity had won. But the cost of the victory was written on the screens around him. The cost was the broken ships of the enemy. The cost was the memory of the Gorgon Protocol, a weapon that twisted the universe itself. He had given the order to use it. He would carry that weight for the rest of his life. "Report," he said, his voice rough. "The World Breaker and its support fleet have been eliminated," the tactical officer said. The man sounded stunned. "The remaining Cthar vessels have powered down all systems. They are not attempting to flee. They are just waiting." Jean nodded. He understood. They had seen their commander, their greatest weapon, and their entire hope for victory unmade in an instant. They had nothing left. No fight. No plan. Only fear. He looked at the communications officer. "Can you locate the commanding officer among the remaining ships? Find me someone who can speak for them." The officer worked for a moment. "I have a signal, Commander. It's from a mid-sized cruiser. The ship's commander is identified as Subcommander Kale. Put him on screen." The main viewer changed. The face that appeared was not like Commander Tavik's. This Cthar looked younger. His scales seemed dull. His black eyes were wide with shock and fear. He did not look arrogant. He looked broken. "I am Commander Jean of the Earth Defense Force," Jean said. His voice was calm but firm. It held no anger, only authority. "Identify yourself." The alien swallowed hard.
"Iam Subcommander Kyle."
Of the cruiser, the silent hunter. His voice was a whisper. "Subcommander Kale," Jean said, "your fleet is destroyed. Your commander is gone. Your attack on our homeworld has failed. Do you understand this?" Kale nodded slowly. "We understand. You were given a warning," Jean continued. "You were told to stop attacking or witness our true fury. You did not stop. So you have witnessed it. The war is over. Your part in it is finished." On the Cthar ship, Kale could only stare. He remembered Tavik's laughter. He remembered the feeling of certain victory. He had believed the humans were weak. He had been wrong. They were not just strong. They were like gods of destruction, wielding powers his people could not even comprehend. The memory of the World Breaker being crushed into a ball of metal was burned into his mind. "What?" Kale's voice cracked. "What are your terms?" Jean did not smile. This was not a moment for triumph. It was a moment for truth. "There are no terms for you to negotiate. You will do exactly as I say. You will transmit a message to your high command. You will send them all the sensor data from this battle. You will show them the destruction of your fleet. You will show them the fate of the World Breaker." He leaned forward slightly, his gaze fixed on the screen. "And you will give them this message. Tell them that Earth is under our protection. The Sol system is ours. If any Cthar ship ever enters our space again, for any reason, we will not be defending. We will not be waiting for you to attack. We will be visiting you. We will come to your homeworlds. And we will show you that what you saw today was only a glimpse of our power. The choice is now and forever yours. Do you understand the message? Kale felt a cold terror worse than any battle. The humans were not just ending the war. They were setting the rules for all future time. They were promising a retaliation so complete it would mean the end of the Kthar people. And after what he had seen, he believed them completely. I understand, Kale said, his voice barely audible. Then do it, Jean said. Now. He made a cutting motion with his hand. The screen went dark, returning to the view of the stars on the Kthar cruiser. Subcommander Kale did not hesitate. He turned to his communications crew. You heard him. Gather all the data. Every recording, every sensor log. Open a channel to the High Command. Priority 1. He prepared to send the most important message of his life. A message of defeat. A message of warning. A message that would change the future of his entire species. Back on the Indomitable, Jean stood up. He walked to the large observation window. Below him, the planet Earth hung in the darkness. It was still whole. It was still beautiful. It was still blue and green and full of life. The silence on the bridge began to change. The tension started to ease. A technician let out a long, slow breath. Another one quietly said, "It's over." Jean looked at Earth. They had saved it. They had paid a terrible price in the years of deception and in the final, horrifying use of their ultimate weapon. But they had saved their home. The human race would live. He thought about the message he had sent. It was a promise of peace, but it was a peace built on a threat. It was a peace built on the memory of fury. It was not the peace he had dreamed of as a young man, but it was the peace they had earned. It was the peace they could keep. He turned to his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting. The immediate threat is over, he said. But our work is not done. We have to help the wounded. We have to secure the remaining enemy ships. We have to go home. He allowed himself a small, tired smile. You have all done well. You have saved our world. Today you were the fury of humanity. And today you were its shield. Be proud. He gave the order to begin the long process of recovery. The war was over. A new chapter for humanity was beginning. The blue and white marble of Earth filled the main view screen of the Indomitable. It was a sight none of them had been sure they would ever see again. The ship was quiet now. The battle was over. The crew moved slowly, their energy spent. They were heading home. Commander Jean stood on the command deck. He looked at the planet below. It looked peaceful from here. He could not see the scars of the long war from this distance. He could not see the fear that had gripped billions of people. From here it was just home. Beautiful and whole. A soft chime sounded. Commander, the communications officer said, we are receiving a high-priority message from the lunar shipyard. It is President Sue. Put her through, Jean said. The president's face appeared on the screen. She was not in her bunker anymore. She was in her office. The window behind her showed a clear blue sky. She looked tired, but the deep worry was gone from her eyes. In its place was a calm strength. Commander Jean, she said, on behalf of all humanity, I thank you, and I thank your crew. You have given us back our future. The credit belongs to every man and woman who fought, and to those who built the weapons we used, Jean replied. It was a victory for all of us. It was, Sue agreed. But it is a victory that comes with a great responsibility. The message has been sent to the Kthar High Command. We are already receiving their response. Jean raised an eyebrow. So soon? They are terrified, Sue said simply. The data subcommander Kale sent them left no room for doubt. They have agreed to all our demands. A formal ceasefire is in effect. They are withdrawing all their forces from every human system they ever occupied. They want no further conflict. Jean nodded. It was the outcome they had hoped for, the only outcome their display of power could have brought. So, it is over. For now, Sue said. We have peace, but we must be watchful. We are no longer the hidden species pretending to be weak. We are the species that crushed an armada with powers they cannot understand. The galaxy will look at us differently now. Some will fear us. Others may see us as a challenge. We will be ready, Jean said. His voice was firm. I know you will, Sue said. Get some rest, Commander. You have earned it. Sue out. The screen went dark. Jean turned back to the view of Earth. The planet was growing larger as they approached. He could make out the shapes of the continents. In his quarters, Pilot Juan packed his small bag. His fighter, the Revenant, was safely stored in the ship's hangar. The silence felt strange to him. For years, his life had been about the war, about training for the moment they would finally fight back. Now that moment was over. He did not know what he would do next. He thought he might like to see his family. He had not seen them in a very long time. On the Jupiter research station, Dr. Mira watched the same news feeds. The entire system was celebrating. People were dancing in the streets on Earth. There were parties on Mars. She saw the joy on their faces. She was glad for them, but she felt a quiet sorrow. She thought of her brother. He had died to make this victory possible. He would never see this day. She walked to a small window in her room and looked out at the giant planet. The work of the station was done. The veil was gone. The secret weapons were a secret no more. Her life's work was over. She wondered what she would do now. Perhaps it was time to go home. 2 weeks passed. The Indomitable landed at a major spaceport. Jean walked down the ramp onto solid ground. The air smelled different than on the ship. It smelled of rain and growing things. He saw a crowd had gathered. They were cheering. They were waving flags. They called his name. He saw Juan being greeted by his family. He saw the young pilot smile, a real, genuine smile, for the first time in years. He saw Mira standing to the side, watching the crowd quietly. Jean did not stay for the celebrations for long. He gave a short speech thanking everyone, and then he slipped away. He went to a quiet place, a memorial wall that had the names of all the people who had died in the war. There were so many names. He found his brother's name. He found the names of friends he had lost on ships that were destroyed as part of the deception. He placed his hand on the cool stone. We did it, he whispered. It's over. He stood there for a long time, remembering the cost. The peace they had won was built on the sacrifices of all these people. He would never forget that. Later, he met with Mira and Juan. They sat in a quiet cafe watching people walk by. Life was returning to normal. What will you do now? Mira asked Jean. I will rest for a while, he said. Then I think I will go back to space. The EDF will need a new purpose now. Not to hide, but to watch, to protect, to explore. It will be a different kind of duty. Juan nodded. I think I will stay with the fleet too. Flying is what I do. It will be good to fly without someone shooting at me. Mira smiled a little. I have been asked to lead a new science council. We will study the technology we kept hidden. We will decide how to use it wisely for building and not just for destroying. It is a big responsibility. They sat in a comfortable silence. They had been through so much together. They had carried the heaviest secret of their species. Now they were just 3 people in a cafe, looking at a future they had fought to create. The sun was setting. The sky was turning orange and pink. On this world, and on worlds across human space, people slept without fear. Children dreamed of the future. The memory of the war would fade, becoming a story in history books. But the lesson would remain. A lesson for humanity and a lesson for the galaxy. Humanity had tried peace first. They had given a warning. When that warning was ignored, they had shown a different side of themselves. They had shown a fury that could break fleets and silence worlds. They were no longer the newcomers, the weaklings. They were the guardians of their own space. They were a power to be respected. The choice for peace was now in the hands of others. To push humanity to its brink was to awaken a fury beyond comprehension. And now the whole universe knew it.